Hi, everybody. Thank you for hopping on with us. And as you know, I'm Laura Martin Bovard with Divine Hustler and also L&B Interiors. And I am beyond delighted to introduce my friend Amanda Hanson, who I met when I was doing the Mama Gina School of Womanly Arts. We were in mastery together, and boy, she got to see me throw some serious rage into my leather tunic that I was wearing that day. And I have been smitten with Amanda ever since that moment. Like, I could not believe your capacity and how you held space for me when I was going through such a rupture. And that type of energy is so magnetic to me. And then I have hopped on and seen you grow your Activating Humans Instagram account, and you are not holding back, my friend. And white women like us need to hear what is coming out of that mouth. You are a force of nature. You say what's on your mind, and you are paving the way for other women who want to know, what does it look like to unwind all of these patriarchal constructs and step into my power as a badass, don't give two fucks woman. And that is who I see you as. So I am dying to share who you are with the few people that follow me. And also, it's just a self serving moment because I'm dying to talk to you more in real time and hear all about. So let's just jump right on in with the first question I always ask, which is, if we really knew Amanda Hanson, what would we know about her? Ready,
Mm,
set, go.
yes. If you really knew Amanda Hanson, you would know as someone who has come from really nothing, single mom on food stamps, growing up very, very poor, that our success as a couple and the daily struggle every day, do we take everything and just give all of it away? Or do we keep some for ourselves and share? So we have decided the keep some for ourselves and share method, but I really struggle with, I even yesterday was talking about turning our home into, like, I was walking around explaining to my husband, well, we could take all of these bedrooms and we could put 2 or 3 sets of bunk beds in each one of the kids' rooms, because two of our kids have left for college, and two more will be gone next year. So I have constant struggles and visions, balancing how to enjoy what we've created and how to make sure that I'm going to move because I think the connection here would be. Um, yeah, so I think for me, that's the one thing that I wish people knew, because I think sometimes it's easy to see something from the outside and perceive it as, we tell ourselves stories about who people are. And there is that daily struggle of, am I doing enough? Is it ever enough? And with so much pain and heartbreak and struggle in the world, I also straddle that place of enjoying my own life and trying not to feel, trying to really just be in those moments and enjoy them and not feel guilty about the privilege I have. Privilege of skin color, privilege of opportunities, privilege of finances and abundance. So that's probably the one thing that I think people would be surprised to know.
Yes. And it is really a thing for white women. And one of the things that I see you as a white woman doing, like your voice for all lives matter and Black lives especially matter right now in this current
Mm,
time that we're in, and the importance of not letting it go, not letting it fall by the wayside now that, the George Floyd and the Breonna Taylor, issues. We cannot be quiet, and we cannot acquiesce, because then obviously we are part of the problem if we're not a part of the solution. So that was one of the things that, as I've gotten to know you and as I've gotten to see what you bring forward with your voice, is like, I tell my husband this all the time, like how staggering it is to me and what you have done for me as an expander. Like, you are living in a very white centric community as far as I can tell, and you're putting yourself out there in a way like you are magnifying the issue to your own kind of, not detriment, but like if you're in an environment where it's more visible about what the voice that you're finding. And to
Mm.
speak to that point of like whether you're enough or whether you're doing enough, like let it be very known that when a woman who looks like you and has your privilege steps forward and steps out, then it holds the rest of us accountable. Like,
Mm.
if I can do it where I am and where I live, y'all can do it,
Mm.
which you're an expander.
Thank you.
So, what do
I,
you want to say about your activism? Let's get that party started, my
ah!
activist friend.
What do I want to say about what?
What do you want to say about your activism? Like, where
Oh,
does that come from? Your passion and your willingness to put yourself out there and really not give two fucks who's watching
I
or listening,
literally,
and your status in your community and all the things.
absolutely. And I think sometimes I think that it's hard to believe how many fucks I actually don't give. And it's not because I think I'm better than anybody, but it's because I'm so convicted in what I believe for humanity. And I am such a champion of what I know is possible for all of us. And so for me, I think it started when I was a child who never felt really seen or heard and had big, huge, crazy feelings and emotions. And there was big, crazy disruption going on in my early childhood. And I wanted someone to like know that I felt some things and wanted to talk about it. And nobody had time, nobody could care less. And so I think I always had this passion for talking to people who were hurting. And then I remember very distinctly, I decided to be a psychologist. I have my doctorate now. I decided to be a psychologist in eighth grade. But I remember very distinctly, I was 19 years old and I was living in Los Angeles and I was working at the time in a group home. And kids were coming on Saturdays. We would have to get the kids dressed up and make them presentable. And families would come and walk through the group home and sit and color with this one, maybe have an apple slice with this one, kick the soccer ball in the backyard with this one, and see who they were interested in adopting. And it was kind of like walking through like the pet store. And it was so grueling and so excruciating. And two little girls that I'd become very close with who were 9 and 11 never got picked. And they always thought if they just brushed their hair the right way or their dress was just pretty enough or they stood up tall enough, maybe that day they would get picked. And I remember every Saturday they would go home and papers were never pulled for them. They would take their dresses off, hang them up for hopes of a different Saturday and spend their day just wondering what was wrong with them. Why weren't they chosen? And that experience and my relationship with those two girls stuck with me for so long. They graduated out of the program. They were given $500 at the age of 18 and wished well and turned to the streets of LA. And that placed something on my heart where, while I was not married yet, I knew that someday, whether or not I had biological children or not, I just knew that adoption was going to be a part of my past. That was just set early on for me. And because I saw in those girls so much, I saw their hearts and the potential and the possibility. And, for whatever reason, everybody was gravitating more towards the little kids at the time. So I think that set something in motion for me. And I think I've always had a heart for the underdog because I felt like the underdog my whole life. And it just takes so very little for us to just ever look up from our own little confines. I always think, we have Black kids, we have brown kids, I have biological kids. My one friend makes a joke when my son left for college, we took somebody else in. And my son, who was leaving for college, said, "He can have my room, Mom." And one of our friends came over the next day and he saw somebody else moving into my son's room. And he said, "What's going on here?" He's like, "It is the United Nations at the Hanson house." And and I've never been a person who's like, "Oh, it's just these kids, just the ones." I literally see all these kids as my kids. I see all women as my sisters. I see all men as my brothers. I don't, and I don't know. I think what I'm struggling with, Laura, is I don't know how to teach that. People come to me and want to become an expander and to really live a life that is so huge and is so inclusive with zero fear. I don't really know if you can teach that.
Well, I think that before we started recording, we were having a conversation about this, and it's like it's what's on my license plate. It says inside job, and people think, oh, you're an interior
Mm,
designer, so inside job. But what I mean is inside job is where do we hold ourselves accountable to live that biggest, most expanded life, and what we cannot do is what we call spiritual bypass, which is you go from discovery, 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 and then you want to go to awaken. So people want to be like Amanda Hanson, and they see your life and they see you living this just fully expressed, very don't give two fucks. I'm going to be a voice box for equality and change and holding people accountable. And people are like, well, I want to be like that, Amanda. How can I get to that? Well, how Amanda got to that, what I am hearing in your story, is that you went through the grief and you felt what those two girls were going through every week they got past, and you have a way of relating to them, and that's that transformative work that happens that I'm imagining drew you to becoming a psychologist in the first place. Is like that's the addiction that I relate to you around, like transformation of self is the only way to become an awakened leader. And that is what I think I heard you saying when you were talking about the women before we started recording who said, teach us about how to, um, you know, get our men to, behave in the certain way or to have these types of relationships. It starts with you.
a
And that is
million
what you
percent.
and I share in common. Like, I want to say to anyone, it is on you to
Mm,
do the transformative work to be able to stand up. But when we go to that place of feeling victimized, or, of course, it's easy for you, attractive white woman married to a guy who sees life as you. Like, it's easy for you to be that because you've already arrived or achieved your success. But what people don't know is the shit you have been through
Oh, wow, yes,
is what brought you
yes,
here. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, this was not an overnight situation, and, um, I would say I am fortunate in that my husband is of for the typical white man, if you will, one of the most progressive men I've ever known. But he always jokes. He's like, "Babe, you don't really give me an option to be any other way." It's
And that's the thing.
this.
Like, women don't think that they can do that.
That's
Do you know
exactly
what I
right,
mean? Like,
Laura.
I have a
Yes,
standard. I have a
yes,
standard. You don't meet the
for sure.
standard? I'm out. But I didn't arrive at that overnight. It took me years to realize that I could say that and to learn. It's relentless self inquiry.
Relentless. And, even when the Black Lives Matter situation was coming on, and I was, you know, waiting, 2, 3 days after the George Floyd situation. And I finally said to my husband, he's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, so a publicly traded company. And I said to him, have you issued a message or a video yet? And he said, I haven't. Do you think I should? And I said, do I think you should? It's a non-negotiable. You are the leader of the company. This company is looking at what is your stance. We have Black children sleeping in this home. We are parenting Black children. Of course, it is non-negotiable. You have to. He's like, well, what if I say the wrong thing? I'm nervous if I offend somebody. So we talked about, what does that look like and the importance of not centering himself in the message, and how, as a white man, do you show up? So he did it in a company of 20,000 people, and it was so beautifully received. But the truth is, Laura, between us, I don't think it would have happened if I hadn't held him accountable for it.
Right? That's what we do for our kings. I was talking about that
Absolutely.
with my husband this morning, actually, that, I love Mark Groves. I follow him. He's just such a divine masculine badass. He's so smart. And someday I want to be on his podcast. Love him. But he was talking about what a quality relationship is and how we show up equal in that divine masculine, divine feminine partnership is really about holding your partner to a standard and saying what's true and making offers of assessment that are based in, hey, I'm just holding you accountable to who you told me you want to become. And that
Mm,
was Scott started doing that for me years ago. Like I used to say, "Babe, you're so good in front of an audience. You're such a strong leader. You have all these qualities." I mean, he's so civically minded. He has such a strong sense of justice and right and wrong. And he has so much to say and he's so intelligent, but he's an introvert. And his whole thing is like, no, I see you being that one. And that was long before I ever found any kind of voice. He saw me before I became me. And he
mm,
held me to that standard. And I give him so much credit for that. And that's what I hear you do for your husband. Like,
mm.
this is what our standards are, babe. Get yourself up there.
Absolutely.
I love
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of what I'm really finding and working with women is I don't believe, and I can say this because the majority of my clientele is white women, but I don't believe that a lot of white women, whether single or dating, feel or married, feel that they have the right, and I hate to use that word, but the right or the power to ask for a higher standard. I see a lot of settling and this attitude of gratefulness. Well, and I talk to women a lot. It's fine to be grateful. I believe so much in the importance of gratitude,
Yeah.
but I think we got some kind of a slip at some point, and as we were being raised, that said just be grateful. Like good enough is good enough. Don't
Just
want for
settle.
more.
Like
Yes,
you already have so much. Like,
yes. I remember
yeah.
one time my mom saying to me when we were having, a rupture in our marriage, and really considering is this going to work for us long haul, and her saying, "He doesn't drink, he doesn't cheat on you, he doesn't gamble, he's not a sports addict," and I thought, "Wow, that's such a low standard." So I'm
That's a
asking for
mindset.
a rising in this relationship, and that's too much. I'm actually being
Yep,
perceived as you're too much because you want to take the marriage even higher. And
yeah,
I feel like a lot of women feel that way, that they should just be grateful for what they have. Or if they're going to do
yeah.
any work, they're going to do it more kind of behind the scenes. They're not necessarily going to include their
Yep.
partner.
Oh my God. I as I do the spiritual work and all the growth and all the everything, like I have had to learn what is appropriate to share with my sister goddesses. My husband's a very pragmatic left brain engineer type. He but he does his own work. And what I've always said to since almost right out of the gate of getting together with Scott and starting our marriage, like what I loved about him was even though he didn't want to grow how I did, he was committed to his own greatness and
Mm,
he was willing to go to therapy and he was willing to get a coach and he was willing to do programs with me. Like he wants to serve the marriage from a higher place and acknowledges that we don't have all the tools. We don't know it all. We do need
yeah,
outside help. Like we don't have the village elders around. So you got to go hire them. That's why we have psychologists and therapists and you know inspirational speakers who are required part of bringing into our our advisor panel or what have
yeah,
you. But
yeah.
I have said to young women from the start and men too, if you hear anyone say, "Stop trying to change me, that's not who I am," run for the fucking hills. Like, anyone who thinks that
Yes.
they're done and they're cooked and they're complete and they're not
Oh,
willing to do work to change, never gonna be a good partner. "This is who I am." Boring, I'm
never.
out, you know?
I hope that I am on my way to my own funeral, still growing and listening to a
Yes,
podcast and stretching and doing uncomfortable things to the very, very end.
yes. We are ravenous, hungry bitches, aren't we?
Oh, it's so fabulous. And I want that. And that's really the mentality with which I bring women in is that idea of like being a greedy bitch and what does it mean and how
Mhm.
fun and fabulous and exciting and I take the perspective of I'm on this phenomenal treasure hunt and I'm
Yeah,
learning and finding so many amazing treasures that I didn't even know were there.
yeah,
And so I just keep digging and digging and they just become so beautiful on my discovery. So I set it up in a way where women feel less fearful about change and self growth,
Mhm.
and make it like this really incredible journey and treasure hunt.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, I have so many questions that I'm sure that I could ask you, and I want to just make sure that I'm tapping into all that I see you bringing forward. I guess what would you give? What sort of suggestion or advice would you give to women who are perfectionistic? And like you sort of alluded to it with your husband, like, gosh, what if I say the wrong thing? Like how does one advise another white woman about, you're afraid you're going to be accused of so many things that I've seen in the news and the media right now about, like watching that crazy white woman on that front lawn with her gun, like protecting her property. Like I think white women who desire to do good in the world, who want to be more outspoken for their black brothers and sisters and be a part of making this 400-year overdue situation, like, what can we do? What would you tell them about, like, letting go of their perfectionism and being vulnerable about getting it wrong and being messy and being willing to fuck up? What do
Well,
you
I
wanna
think
say
we
to
have to,
them?
that's a great question, Laura. I think we first have to be willing to fuck up and be messy in our own lives. I see women have a really hard time, even, on my first couple of times where I meet with groups of 20 women at a time for, anywhere from a 10-week journey to a 6-month journey. And the first few times that they all gather, everyone is sitting, well, really just the first time, because I break them down pretty quickly and we get up and we have a phenomenal time to loosen them up. But I see women all sitting so perfectly, with their perfectly coiffed hair and their outfit and their cup of tea, and everyone's like looking at everyone else and sizing everyone else up. And I think before we can, how could we possibly get comfortable in discussions about race when we're not even comfortable in our own skin and our own humanity? I think that there, sometimes I actually look at, and this is going to be tricky to even hear, but sometimes I look at just white culture in general, and I feel saddened. I almost
Mm,
feel sorry for how much performance
yeah,
and artificiality there is. And I'm not sure, and maybe that's because there is not really an identifying culture that we have. um, so I don't know if in the perfectionism that's a way that we try to like hold it all together, but you'll never be known, you'll never have a true or real relationship in your perfection or persona, whether it's in your marriage, with your friendships, or in race relations. So we have to first be willing to just get real and get messy, and know that only then and there do we really start to make true connections with other people. And
yeah.
it is, you are going to make, as far as the race stuff, people are going to make mistakes, but I think sometimes that can be an excuse for never getting started. Well, when I know it all, or when I
Well,
know
that's
what to say.
perfectionism. I mean, that is like the curse is perfectionism. And also I would love to explore this idea, like, first of all, perfectionism and how the media presents us as women to each other and to the world. Like you have to look a certain way and be a certain way. There's that. And so that's what's safe to put up on social media. That's what's safe to present ourselves as. And then there's also this weird thing with social media. Like, I was talking to a good friend the other day. She's one of my interior design clients, and she's become a good friend. And I said, I want to share more about my messy self with my divine hustler audience so that they can understand that it's okay to do that. And she made this good point, like, you kind of want to have a handshake before you give a hand job. Like, you don't want to do too much too soon, share too much of your transformative work and your grief that you're going through, because it's a little bit vulnerable. Like, you don't want people to see that. So we do keep kind of like, I'm not going to hop on this call with you when I've just rolled out of bed and I'm, like no makeup on. because
Mm,
but now I do it for me, right? It's a different thing. Like when I get
right.
dressed, when I put on my makeup, when I curate myself, I do it for my own self-expression. And it is a very different thing than the performing thing that you were talking about. But there are these boundaries, these fine lines, that we kind of walk. But I want to start showing a little more of that transformative pain and not always the smiles,
Mm.
you know, not always like,
I don't trust
you know,
I don't trust a woman who is always smiling, to be totally honest with you. I don't trust a woman who has it all figured out or who every day is and
oh yeah.
I just think it's so much more beautiful to for all of us just to let that guard down and be more real with each other. For so many reasons, obviously. But I think that we
Well, what
stay imprisoned
about
and
that?
alone.
Yes, imprisoned and alone 100%. I mean, this is a self-serving question, but I am really very curious. Like, I've created this business over 20 years as an interior designer. I have a lot of followers over on my Divine Hustler side that are actually clients of mine, men, straight men.
Mm,
And I feel so exposed. I feel so concerned about, like, I shared a couple months ago now, right after my aunt died and after COVID had started, I just had this massive grief. And I really wanted to share about it. And I think it was like the most watched video I've ever put up.
mm.
But my male clients saw that. And I worried about the judgment, honestly. Like, that's a little, don't you think that's a little bit much? Those are the stories in my head. He didn't say that, but I just sort of like, don't you think that's just like a little too personal to share? I'm like, fuck no, I want to show the world that the grief and the grit and the willingness to explore is where you become that woke, hungry bitch, that
Yes.
woke, hungry, greedy, I gotta have it all person.
Yes, and I think that if we were honest with ourselves, and one, that's such a beautiful example when you show up like that. It's a permission, not just for women, but also for men. And there is this thing that I've been toying with this whole idea recently. I don't know if you've ever read the book Pleasure Activism, but it's an amazing book on how real activists, you know, activism is such hard and thankless work that to stay in activism you really need to find the pleasure in it.
Mhm.
You need to find the pleasure in your day-to-day living because activism could just burn you out, burn you to the ground. And there's, no money in a life of activism. But it's this whole idea of pleasure and eroticism and finding eroticism. And I was talking to a client the other day about this. The idea of I went through something. My father died about 3 months ago. We had really a non-existent relationship, and the little bit we had, we reconnected 2 years ago. And I had hope for maybe something in this
Mhm.
last decade or so of his life, but unfortunately, he died 3 months ago. And something had happened a couple of days ago, which is too much to get into right now. But what I will say is that there was so much pain, so much grief that stemmed back across my entire life. And I moved through it and I danced through it and I felt it. And there's something really beautiful about grief and pain. And just like on the flip side of it is that beauty and that eroticism and that power and that ability to tap into even bigger living because I'm not afraid of the pain.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
actually can harness it and create an energy that can take me to places that if I just put the lid on, I'm like, well, this happened and he died and we just never had the relationship and just stuff and not feel, not feel, not feel. I become stunted then as an emotional human being.
I think that's the secret. I think you just hit the nail on the head, is that I think people make up stories about that it's too painful, and so we medicate, we avoid,
Oh,
we perfect, we perform, we contort, we, do all these things because we have been taught by this culture, take an aspirin, do anything at all costs to avoid pain,
mm,
because as if pain were a bad thing. Pain is just information. It's the
mm,
stories that we tell ourselves about pain that make it painful. And so
exactly
those
right.
women who desire to have that expansion that Amanda has, they the invitation to sit in the field and be with the pain, that's the secret sauce right there.
Mm, yes. I think we have antidepressants, anti-anxieties, anti-everything. And I don't know where or how we got to a place of wanting to be against anxiety or depression or feelings of,
Right.
it's one thing if it's literally taking you out of your daily living game. But I think, like you said, that's all data. All those feelings are data to look at and say, what is going on? Let me tap into this. Let me actually sit in this feeling and learn more from it and be
That's
curious
right.
about it instead of being having a critical eye over all these emotions we feel. What if we just leaned in with some curiosity and
Well,
said,
it's
I wonder what this
scary.
is here to teach me.
It is, and there's something so scary about navigating through it on our own, which is the joy in sisterhood, which is the joy of
Mm,
that even the witnessing that I felt of you and the other sister goddesses watching me grieve the rage I felt in my marriage, watching me grieve my settling and my stopping short of really fully expressing what I needed, like that. It was so painful, and I think creating the groups like you do and being a witness in sisterhood to the pain and also holding space for sisters to have their pain without coddling, fixing, even touching their body, even giving them a visual expression. One of the things that set me more free than anything I've experienced is when I first started in care with Dr. Liz Dobbins from Shine Wellness Center. I had never experienced this before. I had like the spinal movement and everything. It kind of like it allows you to wire new neural pathways and it kind of like wakes you up to these realization. I've started having all these memories. I started having all this experience of of rage and grief and I was crying and I would literally lay on her table and she would let me do that
mm,
for 45 minutes. And I would lay there just crying, grieving, crying, grieving. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't try to make it go away. She let me ride the emotional wave, carry that grief all the way through. And that started to rewire my nervous system
mm.
so that I can hold space and I can be for myself. And then I can do it for others. And that's transformation.
It
That's what
absolutely is. And when we, in my groups, when we do work that brings people to absolute rupture, or, it's very hard, and women come to learn, do not reach for her, do not put your hand on her, because then what happens is we are, number one, we're sending the message, you need consoling, you can't handle this.
yeah,
We also then kind of make it a little bit about us and
that's
our
it.
ability to comfort. And I think we
Yeah.
shut down and stunt, because I know sometimes when I've been in my most profound, deep grief, I need someone to witness it as holy. I don't need someone to interrupt it and make it stop
No.
or go away.
And we're taught that.
We
That's that
are.
like, that you're not a kind, good person if you don't comfort or console them.
Mhm, mhm.
We have everything we
Absolutely.
need to console.
Everything, everything we need. It's unbelievable. But again, that makes no money, right? That billion-dollar pharma business, that billion-dollar beauty industry, they make money by playing on our ability to believe, well, if I just have that, then I'll feel better. When I get that car or that lip gloss or those breast implants or that specialist, then I will have arrived. It's not to say that we
Yeah.
don't need, um, people helping bring us along, or open our mind to new ways, but I'm talking more about the materialistic or the meds, the constant meds, more in those
Yeah.
realms of really
Oh,
running.
don't even get me started
Mm.
on our food industry
Oh,
and on our medical our big pharma industry, like,
they rule the
we
world.
could tell they rule the fucking
They
world.
are
I'm
in
so
bed
sick.
with all the politicians.
I really want to read this quote that I saw on Marianne Williamson's feed this morning as we kind of take this conversation home, um, because this is a battle cry for women. Um, Society's thinking changes when women start to weigh in. Our entire political and economic systems were devised before women had any voice whatsoever in the public sphere. The rebalancing occurring now will alter, save everything. And
Oh,
I mean, talk about a bomb ass quote. And what would it be like? This is my new game. I love to wonder. I wonder what it will be like when women like us keep dialing up our voices audaciously, not giving two fucks ishly, and supporting each other. When you stepped forward and started dialing up your voice, I thought, I can do that too. I know I've got what it takes. I started doing it more. And in turn, that has impacted so many women who have reached out to me to say, wow, I can't believe you said that. Thank you so much for saying that. And that's how we impact the field. And
that's it.
so what if instead of big pharma making millions and, all the fixing and the doing, women and men, woke women that overused word that I still love tremendously. If we make millions by just spreading and sharing and blessing other people in their abundance and in their transformative work, and then those other industries just dry up, you know, that's the
Oh,
vision I have.
oh, that sounds so yummy to me. That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
Just shifting the tides, right?
Yeah. And that's how it starts. It's like one drop in the bucket, and then we have a river that will wash it all clean. So,
Yes, yes.
well, is there anything more that you would like? I would like you to share, like, where can people find you? I mean, besides the obvious Instagram, which is, seems to be most of our world, but I also would like you to maybe say a little bit about your activism nonprofit that you run,
Mhm.
and so that people can go take a look at that and anything else you want to share before we wrap up our call.
Sure, absolutely. So the activism nonprofit is called Fairfield Yabantu, which is Yabantu. So Fairfield Yabantu. And that is local here in Fairfield, Connecticut. We have monthly meetings. We do all kinds of work and gathering the community together for kind of what we call like community thought centers. We do protests. We do we've even worked with lawyers to get kids who were wrongly accused out of situations that would have otherwise ended very differently. So we have many different arms, and there's so much that goes on that we're not even a lot of it's on our website, but we're not even able to report it all because of volume. So that's the activism arm of my life, and then my professional hat is at Activating Humans on Instagram or Facebook, Activating Humans. The idea is to have these conversations that activate something in a human being that
Mhm.
says, I never considered that, or I want more of that. So that little
Yeah.
stir, that little bit of fire that gets like turned on so that you can take your life to a place you didn't even dream before was possible. So Activating Humans on Facebook or Instagram. And then I recently started a group on Facebook. People can request to join. It's called Redefining and Glorifying Midlife for Women 40 plus. Because Laura, that is one of my most sweet spots in life is middle-aged women, from voice to body to power to relationships and exploring all of that. I think that we often, women in midlife, we are the most powerful, but I think
Mhm.
that we are often our energies are sometimes unfortunately fixated on everything that is changing and trying to
Yeah.
remedy that. And if we took that time and energy and financial resources that we spend on that obsession and really moved it over to what you were just talking about, having more of a voice
Yeah.
in the political world and the
Yes.
world going forward, what we would be able to, that energy, harnessing that. So that's
Yeah.
really, but first we have to get women into a place of feeling empowered and amazing. So then they can shift that into using their power in the world. Right?
That is it. A to
That's
the
it.
men. I'm so sign me up. I'm a part of that club, and I have to say I so appreciated having a place to post myself in my sexy new lingerie in that thistle inspired snake lingerie.
I
I was like, I'm putting it
I
up.
mean, that may break the internet. I was like, that couldn't have been any hotter. I had the longest day ever. I came home and somehow I was checking messages and I saw that. I almost dropped my phone. I was like, that is the hottest thing I have seen in a decade. So
I need a
incredible.
place,
Wow.
it's so funny. There is definitely a part of me, like, I was so shamed and made so wrong for how big I was. My little girl was just like, she just wanted to be on stage and seen by everyone, and my dad was like, "Play small, get small, don't," like, he would not let me. And so, I mean, even now, I catch myself not doing things, and I'm like, "Oh, I can't. Oh, I'm not gonna." But when I did the Brother versus Brother TV show, in 2018, I guess it was now, I learned something about myself that I had shut away into a dark portal of my life. Like, I put that little girl away, and when I did that TV show, I was like, "Oh, fuck, I wanna do this." Like, I am so excited about who 60-year-old me is gonna be. I'm gonna be, like, strutting around on stage in lingerie and go-go boots, preaching
I
the
mean,
gospel of
absolutely.
power,
Why would you be
beautiful
anywhere else
Outworld.
doing anything else?
So, anyway, thank you for creating that platform, and letting me
Oh, yes,
get my thrill on.
absolutely.
So let's do this again. God, I could just talk to you all day long. You are such a sister from another mister.
Same, Laura. Same. Thank you so much for this time. I really, really enjoyed it. And
Yeah,
yeah, we can go to so many amazing places with conversation, and
yeah,
I look forward to
absolutely.
doing that.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you very much. I hope your weekend is blessed, and thank you for what
You
you do, and
too.
keep on spreading the gospel of love out there in the world.
You too, Laura. Thanks so much.
Take good care, my friend. I'm going to
Bye
hang us
bye.
up. Okay,
Okay.
bye.
Bye.
Bye.